Hi, and welcome to the NBA show. My name is Morten Jensen, and today, once again, we're back at the Monday news dump. Stay tuned. So first up is Dwyane Williamson, who had his Madison Square Garden debut last night. He played against the New York Knicks. Ultimately, they lost the game. But after the game, he was interviewed and he was smiling all over when talking about New York and Madison Square Garden, at the atmosphere. And of course, that made the internet go crazy. Yes, Dwyane absolutely leaned into his entire love of Madison Square Garden, but you know what? He's 20 years old. I think it's perfectly reasonable for him to basically go in and say, I want to play here, not necessarily for the Knicks, but just as an opponent, because there is a lot of legacy going on there. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, James Harden, the list goes on, all had major games at MSG. It stands to reason that Dwyane looks up to these guys and wants to be a part of that. A lot of players have that game circled in their calendars, and you know what? We shouldn't penalize Dwyane for maybe doing the same thing. So the real concern for me regarding Dwyane isn't the Knicks or this summer or whatever. It is after the 2022-2023 NBA season, after the completion of Dwyane's rookie contract. Theoretically, Dwyane could accept the qualifying offer at that point, play out his last remaining season, and in 2024 become an unrestricted free agent, thus allowing him to sign wherever the hell he wants. Given that his qualifying offer is estimated to be in the $17 million range, you could also argue that's a significant penny for someone at that point in time, thus making it more certain that if an injury should occur that last season, he gets a nice chunk of money. Usually, people sign extensions or go into restricted free agency to get long-term contracts to make sure that they are financially secure for the rest of their lives. Dwyane, you could argue, already is at that stage. He signed lucrative contracts outside of the NBA. Obviously, his NBA contract is going to be rather rich even before he gets his second contract. So we're looking at a guy who's already got it made financially, who might now think, you know what? I want to go elsewhere. I want to determine my own future. I don't want to be burdened with team control on my contract for a significant period of time. So I want to actually sign the qualifying offer. And yes, I'd play 1 year where I'm at a certain level of risk, but outside of that, I'm going to determine my own future after that year. Now, to break it down, the qualifying offer is essentially a 1-year contract that teams have to extend to a player, basically offer it in order to retain their matching rights. If a team does not do this, they don't turn that free agent into a restricted free agent. You have to offer that contract. It's a 1-year contract at the end of your rookie deal, and if you accept it as the player, you will go in, play one final year, and then you'll be an unrestricted free agent. In 2008, former third overall pick Ben Gordon decided to accept the qualifying offer. He played one final year with the Chicago Bulls, averaging over 20 points a game, and then left them for the Detroit Pistons in 2009. The Bulls got no compensation, none whatsoever. Now, granted, the situation between Ben Gordon and Dwyane Williamson, or insert rookie here, could be different. Ben Gordon's motivation for doing so was contractual negotiations with the Chicago Bulls that just didn't go very well. That wouldn't be an issue for someone like Dwyane, who is obviously worth a max contract right now. He would get it offered. So this would more be along the lines of him acting on player empowerment, wanting to determine his own future, knowing full well that wherever he goes, the money will follow to a certain extent. Of course, for Dwyane to accept the qualifying offer, that would be completely unprecedented, given that there wouldn't be any contractual issues going into it. Meaning, this is a guy who stands to earn every single max dollar out there, but he could just decide, nope, I want to go somewhere else because that's what my priorities are. Yes, that's going to open a can of worms. It's going to open a can of debate. Maybe not even a can of worms, because again, we should support free will. We should support player empowerment. We should support the fact that players want to establish their own pathways. I think that's fair. But at the same time, it does make you wonder, how can we trust the system after that? The NBA is created on parity, and if that is not going to be in effect, then what's the ultimate end goal going to be? The Lakers, the Knicks, the Nets, the Clippers, basically getting everyone? I don't personally think so, but it's certainly something that we need to look at. And for the record, I'm bringing Zion up here, just an example. This could also be relevant for Ja Morant, Luka Doncic, and the list goes on and on and on. I just used Zion as an example because of last night's Twitter outrage, concern, jubilance, whatever you want to call it. So that was just him being an example of this. Obviously, Morant, Doncic, those guys, they are in an exact same situation where they could determine their own future if they so wanted to. Next up, we are staying with the New York Knicks theme as the organization is looking to maybe make a deal with Dennis Schröder in free agency. Now, the Los Angeles Lakers point guard recently turned down $84 million over 4 years by the Lakers. I think he wants more than that going into free agency. He knows this is a weak market. He knows a lot of teams are sitting on a ton of money with not a particularly great crop of players to spend it on. So he's thinking, I want to capitalize. For the Knicks, according to Ian Beckley out of SNY, they aren't interested in going into a bidding war, which I think is really smart on their behalf. Given that size of a contract, I wouldn't necessarily support them going after him aggressively. Beckley also noted that the Knicks have interest in Lonzo Ball from the New Orleans Pelicans. That's a guy I think would fit the bill so much more, especially instead of Schróder, who is an undersized, offensive-oriented point guard. Ball is bigger, defensively oriented, a better passer, a better three-point shooter, especially off the catch. So yeah, I would hate for the Knicks to go all in on Schróder over this summer and spend that type of money on him when you could instead have Ball, or hell, maybe you could split those money into 2 or maybe 3 players. If the Knicks had a chance to use that type of money to go after Richaun Holmes and Norman Powell, I think that would be so much more beneficial. Now, I don't know if those money matches up necessarily. I think Powell is going to be looking at 20+ million a year. Wouldn't shock me if Richaun is looking at 15+, but the Knicks could still carve out that cap space. So you know what? I would rather go that option than Schróder. Finally, we're going to be talking about Dwyane Wade, who is now a minority owner for the Utah Jazz. Now, first up, for all you guys who watch Inside the NBA and who love that dynamic there, it is being reported that Wade is not going to leave that show, which makes a lot of sense because they already have Shaq, they have Grant Hill, both of whom are already minority owners for the Sacramento Kings and Atlanta Hawks, respectively. So it stands to reason that he also gets the same benefit of staying on the show and not be forced out because of his ownership ties. For the Jazz, though, it becomes that much more interesting. I think having someone like Dwyane Wade associated with your ball club is going to make you more interesting and maybe even more attractive in free agency. Now, historically, the Utah Jazz have not been an attractive market to go to in free agency. That's just never been the case. So Wade's presence there might actually help them in that regard. The Jazz obviously right now are just rolling through the damn league, and having Wade on their side, turning that into more than just one of those, small market team that overperforms expectations, but actually turning them into a dynamic powerhouse over the course of the next couple of years, that could be a huge boon. It's being reported that Wade also wants to have a very active role on the team, inside the organization, in terms of decision making and whatnot. Now, personally, I think that is music to my ears if I'm a Jazz fan or if I'm just a Jazz employee. Look, Wade has not just the brand, but he has charisma. He is very, very famous. People know what he stands for. He is a brand. And for a brand like Wade to come to Utah and say, I actively want to be here, I actively want to be a part of this organization, I actively want to affect change, I would be shocked if that didn't materialize in players wanting to go there to a much higher degree than what is currently on the table for them right now. I would be flabbergasted if that didn't turn into also the Jazz becoming one of those teams that gets more media coverage. The Jazz for years have been routinely underutilized in that regard as well. Lately it's been picking up a little bit steam. That's partly because they've been the best team in the NBA this year, but it really shouldn't need to come to that. This is an organization that knows what it's doing. They're professional through and through. For Wade to come in and actually legitimize it, that is very, very important. Now, you could also argue, should it even be necessary for someone like Wade to come in and basically give the Jazz his seal of approval before everyone else kind of jumps on the bandwagon? No, it shouldn't, but this is the NBA, this is sports. That's just how things work, unfortunately so. But better late than never. Wade is now a part of the Utah Jazz. He's going to make sure that this franchise is going to reach its potential, and I personally think it's going to be super exciting. I want the Jazz to be an attractive free agent destination, not just because of them, but also it's going to show that small market teams can have a drastic effect also on how the NBA landscape is changing. It stands in contrast to what I brought up with Zion and all of that, of course, but it would be nice to see more smaller market teams get in on the fun. Hell, a superstar signing with the Jazz, it would create headlines the world over, and it would be formidable to see a small market team have that type of win, honestly. How often do we see the story in the other way where it's a superstar leaving, whether it's Paul George moving off from Indiana and then Oklahoma to go to LA, Kawhi Leonard going from San Antonio to Toronto and then also going to LA, LeBron going from Cleveland to LA. There's a theme here, right? But it would be so fantastic to see it go the other way around. Someone leaving a high-profile major NBA organization to sign somewhere else where there really isn't a whole lot of attention. The NBA would be better for it, in my opinion. So for Wade to become a part of the Jazz is very, very exciting to me, and it should be exciting to you.